All right, so take this off. Tonight's going to be a really exciting night. If any of you have not gone through the Daniel studies, I did that, I think it was a year ago this fall, and I've done it some years prior to that. Tonight is going to be an amazing night. It's going to really, I think, open some eyes thinking, wow, talk about Bible prophecy. It's this is it. Daniel, this last half of Daniel. Now, we know we probably going through Sunday school and church, and we've gone through probably so many Daniel stories, and probably for a lot of us, we tend to stop at Daniel 6. We talk about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the lion's den, and Daniel and his friends not eating the food, and then the big statue and this. But then once we get past 6, starting into 7, then it's kind of like, where did this just take off to? And wow, this is completely different than chapters 1 through 6. There doesn't seem to be a real storyline going on here. Well, it's a tremendous amount of prophecy. In fact, all of it is prophecy. 1 through 6 is very prophetic. In fact, we're going to jump back to chapter 2 a little bit tonight. But this is going to be a really in-depth kind of a prophecy section that we'll be getting into. Now, some of you have been wondering, well, what are we going to do here in January? Well, good question. I'm glad you asked. So what we're going to do is it's going to be, I thought I had written it down, but it's going to be, I think it's the 12th or the 19th of January. That's the 30th, either 12th or 19th. I've been asked if I'd be willing to teach a subject, because what we've been finding out, there's just a whole lot of people here at our church that have various backgrounds of different religions. And so we're going to do it's based off of a book called So What's the Difference by Fritz Ridenour. And I've based the series off his book, but it's called So What's the Difference? So what it's going to be, we're going to compare the major religions of the world to Christianity. And we'll take one major religion each week, and we're going to talk about that religion, then lay it over to Christianity. And I'll tell you, you want a topic that will really, really cement your faith. This is one of them that's going to do it, because we're going to see that nothing out there even compares to the validity and everything of Christianity, and to the freedom of Christianity and what it stands for. So we're going to do that in January. So whenever it comes out for registrations or something like that, feel free to register for that. Now, so here we go, introduction. Starting with chapter 7, verse 1. It says, in the first year of Belshazzar. Now, what we're doing, 7 and 8 are out of sequence. Really, this should be between chapter 4 and chapter 5. So what we're doing is, I know last week we talked about the Babylonian Empire being taken over by the Medo-Persian Empire. Well, we're kind of putting that on hold, and we're going back again after King Nebuchadnezzar dies. Okay, his grandson, Belshazzar, he now becomes king. So we're going back to the Babylonian Empire. So kind of rewind your thinking back a little bit, because it doesn't go in chronological order. So King Nebuchadnezzar has died. The grandson is taken over, and you have a little chart there that I'll give you. And so it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his mind as he lay on his bed. Then he wrote the dream down. So when we read Daniel chapter 7, he actually, after he woke up, got a pen, paper, or his iPhone, or the computer tablet or something, and he wrote this down, and he told the following summary of it. So chapter 7 takes place during the first year of Belshazzar, probably around 553 BC. And it's going to be about 14 years before the fall of Babylon. So Belshazzar does not realize he's got only a 14-year span until that fateful night when the Persians, Darius comes in and rechanneled the Euphrates River, comes in and takes over. And so that's the fall was in 539. Now, just to give you a little bit of date work here. If you take 539 and subtract 4 years from that, we get 535. Now, if you add 535 to 70, you get 605. Exactly 70 years that Jeremiah prophesied that Israel would be in captive in Babylon. So this is only going to be a 4-year period after he takes over. Then that 70 years is going to be up. And then when the Medo-Persian Empire comes in, one of the very first things that Darius, or could be Cyrus, could be the same person, does is let the Jews start to come back. Now, so here we have Nebuchadnezzar up here. So he's king, he dies, he has only one son. It's the craziest name, Evil Merodach. Okay, little baby Evil Merodach. So anyway, he's the only son. He should have become king, but the son-in-law to Nebuchadnezzar murders him. Okay, and so then this guy's son, Labish Marduk, okay, he's supposed to take over, but then, and I got your arrow the wrong way in your book. This arrow, it should be going down, because what happens, Nabonidus, the son-in-law of Nebuchadnezzar, murders this guy. So sure enough, here we are at Belshazzar, the grandson to King Nebuchadnezzar, is now taking the throne. So apparently we tend to go from Nebuchadnezzar, it seems like, right pretty much to Belshazzar. And we had all of this stuff going on in between, someone killing whoever and so forth. So here we are in his first year. Now, Daniel's vision takes place again, like I said, between chapters 4 and 5. So if you were to take 7 and 8 and put them between 4 and 5, you'd have more of a chronological order. Now, Daniel had these visions after King Nebuchadnezzar's reign and during his exile years from the king's palace. Because when we get to after Nebuchadnezzar, we don't hear anything really much about Daniel's role. So it almost appears as though he's been shelved. Now, I do know at one point it says that he went about the king's work, but the problem was when Belteshazzar was going to coronate him for being able to interpret his dream, he didn't know who Daniel really was until the queen comes in and says, hey, there's a man who can interpret. So it looks like Daniel was possibly shelved. Now, here he was, the #2 guy in all of Babylon. And when King Nebuchadnezzar had that for 7 years, living like an animal, okay, because of not giving God the glory, obviously Daniel being #2 was probably #1. But when the 7 years were over, he gives it back to King Nebuchadnezzar. So here he is in this prominent position, and now it looks like he's kind of shoved out of the way. But what does he do? He doesn't rant, he doesn't rave, he doesn't say, oh God, I hate you now because look what you've done to me. You know, nothing like he worships God. He stays faithful. Now, Daniel 7, verse 2. It goes and says, Daniel said, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. Now you get this off, you'll see this in Revelation. When it talks about the sea, it's meaning the masses of people. And the winds means a great disturbance. So there's a great disturbance going on among the people of the world at this time. So the winds in 7:2 again speak of agitation, propaganda, public opinion, and disturbing. Boy, that sure doesn't sound like anything like today, does it? Well, while the sea suggests the masses, the mob, and the peoples of the Gentiles. So these are very, very troubling times that's going on during this time, about 539 BC or so. In other words, the conglomerate population of the Gentiles, it was restless. They didn't have a good leader. King Nebuchadnezzar had died, though there probably was never another great leader like King Nebuchadnezzar, even though Alexander the Great was very, very strong. His lifespan was shortened. So, but where King Nebuchadnezzar, his rule was total throughout everything. And so we don't really have apparently any great leaders to hold this together. So a lot of agitation is happening. So we know that Daniel's had a vision, right in the first year of Belteshazzar, and the times are troubled. Okay, so the verses that we're going to read here, 3 through 10, it says, this is his dream. He said, I saw 4 great beasts, and they were coming out from the sea. So these beasts are coming out from among the conglomerate of the people, different from one another. Now, the first was like a lion. Now, see if you can figure out who this represents. But had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and set up on 2 feet like a man. A human mind also was given to it. So it's referencing Nebuchadnezzar when he lost his mind and lived like an animal, but then God restored him. So that's Babylon. And behold, another beast, a second one resembling a bear. And it was raised up on one side. Okay, so here you have a bear, and it's kind of tilted up on one side. And 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. So these ribs are probably kingdoms that this bear has. And they say this to it, arise to the bear, devour much meat. Okay. After this, I kept looking, and behold, another one like a leopard. Okay, now this is going to be a very fast animal, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. So not only was this animal fast as a leopard can be, it's got 4 wings. So this thing's got jet engines on it, okay, which had on its back 4 wings like a bird. And then this beast, also this leopard, though, being very, very quick, suddenly is going to have 4 heads and dominions given to it. So we know what happened. This is talking about Greece. Okay, Alexander the Great was a swift moving. He just conquered from Italy pretty much all the way over to probably about the Indus River, right down below the Black Sea area. He took all of that very, very quickly, but his life was shortened, and his kingdom was going to be divided among 4 generals. Those are the 4 heads. Now, you got to remember this dream, these things haven't happened yet. He's dreaming this in Babylon. So he's prophesying about the Medo-Persian Empire, which is not taken over yet. He's prophesying about the Greek Empire, which has not come up yet. And he's also going to prophesy about the Roman Empire. Now, he's given wisdom on these areas because the dream is going to be interpreted. The Medo-Persia is one, Greece is the other, Rome is the other. But he still doesn't have any idea how all that is going to take place. Now it says, after this, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because this 4th beast is going to somewhat represent 2 kingdoms, the Roman Empire and the revived Roman Empire that's going to take place during the tribulation period. It says, and it was dreadful and terrible and extremely strong, as we know that Roman Empire was, and it had large iron teeth. Now we're going to get into the Antichrist, or the tribulation Roman Empire. It said it devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and was different from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns, and we'll talk about those 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, comes up among these 4, and 3 of the previous horns are going to be plucked out before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like human eyes, and a mouth uttering great boasts. I kept looking until thrones were being set up. Now he's looking farther into the future when Jesus comes after the tribulation period and sets up his millennial kingdom. I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days, which was going to be Jesus, took his seat. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were a burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were serving him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court convened, and the books are opened. Okay, this is going to be the judgment now. When Jesus talks in the Gospels about separating the sheep from the goats, okay, the sheep being believers, goats unbelievers, books are going to be opened here, and unbelievers are going to be swept away into eternal fire. Okay, and the judgment is going to be there, and the books are going to be open. So we see Jesus as judge. So what we have here, these verses represent the four kingdoms in Daniel chapter 2 that was characterized by the great image of Nebuchadnezzar's dream statue. So remember in chapter 2, both Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar had this dream that the head of the statue was made of gold, and that's going to be Babylon. Okay, highlighter. Okay, and just changing pen color here. Okay, and so that's going to be this empire. Oops, here we go. It's not wanting. Oh, there it goes. This empire right here. My ink was drying up. Okay, and so this is the Babylonian Empire. Let me just kind of do this a little bit better. Okay. So here we go. The head, this is Babylon, okay, which refers to this map right here. Okay, so in chapter 2, we see Babylon as a head of gold. Okay, in this dream here, we see it with that of feathers being plucked and being put up on their feet, his feet. And then we hear the chest area of silver. This is Persia. Okay, and here it's going to be a little bit stronger. Now, what's interesting about this is the metals devalue as they go down, but in some ways the empires tend to actually get bigger, which is possibly, I know one person I was reading saying that it probably was showing the devalue of just morality and human life. Which could have easily been. Now, the bear, it said that it was raised up on one side, and chances are what that was meaning that, and see, who would have known this during Daniel's time? Because don't forget, we're in map number 1. Daniel is in this one right here. He hasn't seen number 2, 3, and 4 actually happen. But what we're going to see that this second empire is going to be the Medo-Persian Empire, and it's going to be consisted of 2 groups, the Medes and the Persians. The Persians are going to be the stronger of the 2. So the bear is leaning on the strong side, the weak side is up. It's got 3 bones in its mouth. Bible historians tend to think that the 3 bones could have been Lydia, which was, if I were to erase this here, okay, Lydia was the western part of Turkey here. That was kind of a little empire within itself. So the one of the bones is probably Lydia. The second one is possibly Egypt. And then, of course, the third one would have been Babylon. So the Medo-Persian Empire went as far as, because you notice over here in map 1, Lydia is not conquered. But under the Medo-Persian Empire, Lydia is conquered. So it's the 3 bones are probably these 3 empires that's going to be sucked up into the Medo-Persian Empire. So that was the first part of the statue and the dream. The second part, the third part is going to be Greece, and this is going to be this map right in here. So we can see with Greece, it's still taking a lot of what the Medo-Persian Empire did, but it doesn't go as far east. Notice here how far east it goes, almost to the Indus River here. It takes goes southward here. It goes up and around the Black Sea. Okay, here the Black Sea. It goes up and around the Caspian Sea. So it's really powerful here. Now it shows it as a leopard being very, very swift, because when Alexander took this over, he took it over very, very swiftly, and he was short-lived his life. And so in this, it showed that there were 4 heads to the leopard, because after Alexander dies, this empire gets split into 4 pieces. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And then here we have the legs being Rome, and this is referring to the 4th map here. And so the Roman Empire, you can see it's even going up as far as England, down to Spain, North Africa, besides Egypt. It does not go as far east, okay, as the others, but then of course it becomes very strong. But what's going to happen is, this is what we're seeing here at the end of his dream, the feet of iron and clay. Iron means Rome. So during we think that the Lord's coming is going to come right at the ankles here, okay, when Jesus comes for the church. So this is going to be now the 7-year tribulation, the feet. And the world is going to be made up of partially the Roman Empire. A lot of Bible historians feel that the clay means it's going to be a weak Roman Empire. I think that's very probable. Here's a Mervinism, okay, just a total Mervinism. You're not going to read it, take it as you want. I think it could also be the clay of possible other countries that might not have been part of the Roman Empire, still making it weak. But we don't know. I just sometimes get some of these theories. But anyway, verse 4 through 8. Now, so here we go. Here's our 4 things. The lion, which was Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, the bear, Medo-Persian Empire. Leopard, Alexander the Great and his empire later. And the beast, really more than anything, kind of skips the Roman Empire, as we knew right before the 4th century BC on to about almost 1400 AD practically. It almost skips that Roman Empire and goes through the empire of the Antichrist. Now, the eagle's wings, again, represented the speed of Babylon's army. The plucked feathers represented Nebuchadnezzar's mental lapse and the loss of identity. The fact that the beast stood upon its feet as a man represented Nebuchadnezzar's restoration. The bear, again, rising up on one side. It's kind of hard to see it on this picture, but most likely, again, represents the dual reign of the Medes and the Persians, with the Persians being the stronger of the 2. Again, all of this is being prophesied, and Daniel is in the lion right now. That's where he's at, the Babylonian Empire. So he's seeing all these things. God's giving him the prophecy, and they have not yet come. But they're going to, as we know in history, go back to your high school days, whatever, and took world history. This is what you're going to read about. You probably won't talk about Daniel per se, but you certainly will read about these empires. The leopard's 4 wings represented the tremendous speed of Alexander's empire. The 4 heads represented the division of Alexander's empire after his death. Now, more attention is given to the 4th beast than to all the other 3. And again, this 4th one here represents Rome, and primarily Rome during the tribulation period. Okay, now the 10 horns, again, we don't have that in the, I'll say modern Rome, but we will have the 10 horns during the tribulation period. They're going to be 10 kingdoms. And so it's going to represent, we won't be here to see it, we'll have been raptured, represent the future 10, it's going to be a 10-nation confederacy that's going to form. Okay, apparently this confederacy is going to, right after whatever happens, right after the tribulation period, I wouldn't be surprised if it is in a major, major world war that takes place. If you look at Revelation, the 2nd of the seals to be opened, to talk about the wars and killings and everything that's going to be taking place. I wouldn't be surprised if somehow right off the bat there's going to be major destruction, major wars. It could be some of those cataclysmic things that we saw videos of. I can't believe how many times I've looked. Have you noticed this week on the computer, one of the main things, asteroid hitting the Earth? I thought, come on, we just talked about this. Yeah, and so it's been kind of popping up. And now that we're in, they say it's going to take, probably millions of years before anything like this happen. Oh, God can just flick his finger and cause it all to happen at once. But I think it's right in the beginning of the tribulation, it's going to be some major, major catastrophes. Again, it's my own personal thought. Don't read it, but I just kind of would not be surprised if the world does not reduce itself to basically the Roman Empire world. Just kind of seeing that, because again, you don't hear any armies coming from the west. It should be across the Atlantic Ocean. You don't see that. Third of the oceans are gone. Could be the Pacific. I don't know. It's just my own thought. Take it as you leave, but I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. It's not reduced down to that area. And so it's going to take place during the tribulation period. It kind of makes sense since we're going to have a Roman Empire coming up. Either if the United States and South America and Mexico and Central America is all here, we're going to be under the Roman Empire. And, the distances don't make sense. And if we have world wars, how are we going to even get across the ocean if all electricity, everything is knocked out? So like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the map just decreases. Now, the 10 horns paralleled the 10 toes of Nebuchadnezzar. So this fourth beast has 10 horns on it, 10 toes down here. So it's going to be a 10-nation confederacy rise up somewhere in that, I feel, Mediterranean, Eurasia part of the world. You'll hear a lot of commentators say they're going to be 10 nations of Europe. Well, the Roman Empire didn't contain all of Europe. The Roman Empire contained some of Europe, but also contained some of Eurasia. Could it be a blend of these, with the capital not being in Rome, but the capital being in Constantinople, which was actually a capital of Rome for 1,000 years, where Rome was only a capital for maybe 500. So we sometimes, I think, I'd like to, I don't know, but it's just throwing it out there. So it's going to be this 10 nations are going to rise. Okay, now out of this is going to come the Antichrist. So apparently this conglomeration is going to form, okay, in the world, the little horn. And from these 10 nations, this Antichrist is going to come up, arise from among the 10-nation confederacy. So it seems to be that the confederacy comes first, then the Antichrist comes up. He's going to rise up here, and he's going to take charge. And right away, he's going to pull 3 of those nations out. Okay, and we don't know what nations those will be. I could take a guess, but I don't know. It says, I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were a burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from him. We've read this before. Thousands upon thousands were serving him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court convened and the books were opened. Now, we look at Revelation. So this is the judgment part. And right after the judgment part, Christ is going to set up a new not a new heaven, new earth, but he's going to set up his millennial reign. And this is what that's going to look like apparently after the judgment. Now we're in John, Revelation. Okay, so we're in 90 AD or so now. And he showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God. Not fire this time, but a river, and of the Lamb. In the middle of its street, on either side of the river was the tree of life. So apparently there's a river running down here, and some of the roots are here and some of the roots are here, and the tree is this way. And on either side of the river was the tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. There will no longer be any curse, and the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his bondservants will serve him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. There will no longer be any night, and they will not have need of the light of a lamp, nor the light of the sun, because the Lord God will illuminate them, and they will reign forever and ever. I heard it say once, and I think it's true, that when Adam and Eve were in the garden, they were clothed in light. I think that their clothing was light. And so this is why when they sinned, they suddenly realized they were naked. I think that clothing of light was gone, and they saw that because the Lord will illuminate them, and they will reign forever and ever. Oh, my little doggy there. It's just saying, if you're getting a little tired. Okay, now verses 9 through 10 represent the preparation for the judgment. So the verses Daniel 9 through 10 shows us that the books are going to be open, and there's going to be a judgment time on earth. Now verses 11 through 28 then continue to talk about after the judgment. And I kept looking at the night vision, and behold, with the clouds, one like a son of man coming. And he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, honor, and a kingdom, so that all the peoples, nations, and populations of all languages might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. So the kingdom will be Christ's kingdom during the millennial reign. Now, the times of the Gentiles began with Nebuchadnezzar. You'll hear this phrase sometimes, time of the Gentiles. It'll end with Christ's return after the tribulation. So what happened? I mean, this is huge. When Babylon captured Israel, Israel ceased to be autonomous. From that time, starting from 605 BC until 1948, after World War II, did it actually become a nation again. But we still call this the time of the Gentiles because Israel is not completely free. Read almost every night how they're being attacked and rockets are coming into it. So it's still the age of the Gentile rule, you might say, of the earth. When Nebuchadnezzar reigned, he was basically reigning over the whole known world at that time. Countries were, flocking to him and giving him gold and all sorts of gifts. He was the ruler. That was really Israel's main reign. But once they got taken, that ended. And we call it the time of the Gentiles until Christ comes and begins his millennial reign. And then the age of the Gentiles is over with. And it's going to be the age of Christ. He will reign. Now, the goat and the ram. Now, it says in the third year, so we go chapter 4, chapter 7, chapter 8 now. So we're still in Babylon. Belshazzar still's on the throne. He still doesn't know it, but Darius is going to come in and wipe him away about 14 years. And so it says, in the third year of the reign of Belshazzar, the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, subsequent to the one which appeared to me previously. I looked in the vision, and while I was looking, I was in the citadel of Susa, which is in the province of Elam. And I looked in the vision, and I myself was beside the Ulai Canal. Okay, so what's happening here is the vision took place 2 years after chapter 7, and before the fall of Babylon in 539. So Daniel is here, okay, in Babylon, but he finds himself in the vision in this is just almost a know-nothing spot called Susa. So why is he going to find himself in this almost know-nothing spot? It's going to become the capital of the Medo-Persian Empire. So remember, he's writing this down. Was he to know that Susa would be the capital of the Medo-Persian Empire? I don't think so. But see, this is all unfolding. It happened. Now, Daniel's vision took him to Susa, which later, like I said, became the capital of the Medo-Persian Empire. Now, at the time of the vision, Susa was a little-known town, yet destined to be the important capital of Persia, the home of Esther. Now, remember in our Bible, when you read about Queen Esther, okay, the book of Esther, okay, this is where it's taking place. Esther Okay, and it was also the city which Nehemiah comes from. Nehemiah is the one that leaves Susa, goes to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem in that miraculous amount of time. So Susa here is where we read about, I'll talk about Esther in a little bit, where her story comes from. After the Medo-Persian Empire took it, she was the queen in Susa. So it kind of hooks a little bit of story here and history together. Susa, interesting enough, was also the place where the Code of Hammurabi was found in 1901. Some of you might remember that in your history class as the Code of Hammurabi. The historians feel that it was probably written right around 1780 BC, about 1780 BC. When we talk about Moses, the book of Exodus, that's about 1350. So Hammurabi comes before the Ten Commandments or anything by about 300 years. So this is why a lot of you'll hear a lot of secular historians say, oh, the Moses laws, the Ten Commandments was a copy from the Code of Hammurabi, because a lot of things in the Code of Hammurabi is in as part of the Ten Commandments. No, what it shows you is Romans chapter 1, that God has placed an awareness of himself in the hearts of everybody. God has given us a conscience. Everyone has a conscience. And so even before the laws of Moses were put, it was in the conscience of humanity not to kill, not to destroy, not to steal, so forth like this. So no, it doesn't mean that anyone copied it from the Code of Hammurabi. It just shows that God's laws have always been implanted in the heart of humanity. Now, the reason why Daniel found himself again in Susa rather than Babylon was because this vision applied to the upcoming Medo-Persian Empire. Again, ancient Susa was about 150 miles north of the present head of the Persian Gulf near Iran. Actually, Susa, I was doing some research here. Actually, Susa would be in today's, what would today be Iran. Because see, Iran kind of... a very crude drawing here, comes down and around and I think kind of up this way. And then Iraq kind of comes around this way. Like I said, crude, but you have Iraq and Iran. So basically Daniel was in what today was Iraq and then what today is eventually Iran. And so, so that's kind of where the two capitals were and what would today be Iraq and then what today would be Iran. Now, verses 3 through 4, let's see here, we get something interesting again. It says in chapter 8, verse 3 through 4, then I, Daniel, raised my eyes and looked, and behold, a ram, which had two horns, was standing in front of the canal. Now, the two horns were long. Now, this is a third set of animals. Okay, we had a statue in chapter 2. Okay, we had animals in chapter 7. Now in 8, we're going to have two more different animals, but two of them are going to represent the other two chapters. So it says, then I raised my eyes and looked, and behold, a ram which had two horns was standing in front of the canal. Okay, now that'd be the probably the Uli Canal there. Now the two horns were long, but one was longer than the other, kind of like the bear, one being raised up on the side. So we're obviously talking about Medo-Persian here is going to be the ram, with its one horn longer being Persia, but one was longer than the other, and the longer one coming up last. I saw the ram butting westward, northward, and south, and no other beast could stand against them. So if you look at your map, at the Medo-Persian Empire, and you see where Susa is, you can see, sure enough, he went north, he went south, and he went west, because east was pretty much Persia anyway. So it's north, south, and west. And no other beast could stand against him, nor was there anyone to rescue from his power. But he did as he pleased and made himself great. So the Medo-Persian Empire was very, very powerful. Now, the ram, as you see in the picture here, okay, is there on our right. The ram signified the Media Persia. The first horn represented the Median Empire, while the second larger horn represented the Persian Empire, and Persia would become the greater of the two. So here's the ram. So here we had that. Oops, wrong one. Oh, I lost my pen. Let's get her back. Get her back. Okay, so here we have in chapter 8 the Medo-Persian Empire being a ram. In chapter 7 it was a bear. Okay, in chapter 2 it is the chest of silver. Okay, now, oh well, let me go back. Okay, let's see. Let me go this way. So we know now who the goat is going to be, don't we? Okay, going to be Greece, Alexander, coming from the west. So let's read 5 through 7. While I was observing, behold, a male goat was coming from the west over the surface of the entire earth without touching the ground, showing the speed. It was so fast that it wasn't even hitting the ground. And the goat had a prominent horn between its eyes. Okay, so like a unicorn, straight out. He came up to the ram that had the two horns, which I had seen standing in front of the canal, and rushed at him in his mighty wrath. Okay, and I saw him come up beside the ram, and he was enraged at him, and he struck the ram and smashed his two horns. And the ram had no strength to withstand him. So he hurled him to the ground, trampled on him, and there was no one to rescue the ram from his power. Now, under Xerxes, okay, see, Darius, Cyrus had died, okay, and then a new king in the Medo-Persian Empire came up called Xerxes. There was a movie a number of years ago named Xerxes, and it showed this battle that we're talking about. Xerxes and Persia intended to move west toward Greece. However, the goat, Greece, swiftly, the goat, no, let's see, the ram is Medo-Persia, the goat is Greece. Okay, I'm getting my animals confused here. So the goat, Greece, swiftly attacked and destroyed Persia from the west, which is exactly what happened. Let's see, I don't want to get ahead of my notes here. Yeah, okay, I'm on here. So what happened here, Xerxes, from the Medo-Persian Empire, he had a 300,000 man army. Now, he had a series of boats, okay, that had met him as Xerxes was coming across here. Okay, they're going to meet up here, and he's going to have a series of boats meet him, and the two are going to, the land group, the boat group are going to meet here, but he's going to get caught in a quagmire here, and he's going to lose horribly to the Greek Empire. And he's got to go home in horrible, horrible defeat. Now, interesting, this guy Xerxes, Bible scholars feel, was the king to Queen Esther of the Bible. So, well, remember Xerxes, his name was also Ahasuerus, but when his queen Vashti did not come out and dance for him, he was in a drunken stupor, all that. He was probably getting ready for this big conquest. There's a massive drinking party, if you read Esther, that was going on. A lot of Bible historians think that he was getting ready for this 300,000 man army. And it was so slow. They're bringing their wives, they're bringing everything with them of luxury, showing the lumbering bear, okay? And so they think that he was getting ready for this. So he wanted his queen Vashti to come and dance for them, and she regretted it. She didn't, and so he banished her from being the queen. And so then when you read your Bible, it says that the king began thinking about Vashti. And Bible scholars think that possibly what happened was after this horrible defeat, he goes home and now he needs a mommy. He's sulking. He needs his queen again. So they say, let's find you a new one. And Esther comes on the scene now. So this is kind of hooking a lot of history and Bible all together. Now, so verses 8 through 12, it says, Then the male goat made himself exceedingly great. But once he became powerful, so we're talking about Alexander the Great now, the large horn was broken, and in its place, 4 prominent horns came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. So his empire is going to be broken among 4 generals. He had no sons. So the only ones who could do it, take over, were 4 of his generals. So, and out of one of them, and we'll read about this one in a little bit. And out of one of these horns, as the empire is broken into 4 sections, is going to come a small horn, okay, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. It grew up to the heavenly lights, and some of the lights, wait a minute. It grew up to the heavenly lights, and some of the lights, that is, some of the stars it threw down to earth, and it trampled them. It even exalted itself to be equal with the commander of the army. Strange guy. We'll see who this was. And it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And because of an offense, the army will be given to the horn, along with the regular sacrifice, and it will hurl truth to the ground and do as it pleases and be successful. Now, the phrase in verse 8, as soon as he was mighty, the large horn was broken, represents Alexander's sudden death. He died on his, as he was conquering out the world. He was coming on back drunk. Some commentators say it was a massive drinking binge that he went on. There's some other theories, but he dies before he ever gets back to Greece and Macedonia. Alexander was seized by a fever. A lot of historians think it was after a night-long drinking binge. He dies in Babylon, okay, interesting enough, in 323 BC. So we've kind of run down a whole bunch of time. But see, Daniel was still living in Babylon. Okay, 539 has not happened yet when Darius comes in and captures. So he's seeing all the way down to 323 BC. Now, the 4 horns represented Alexander's divided empire. He had 4 generals. One is Ptolemy. Lysimachus was another. Seleucus, which is going to be very interesting, and Cassander. Okay. Now, Lysimachus here is going to take what would be Greece and Macedonia. Seleucus here, and it goes on for generations. The Seleucus Empire, Lysimachus, his thing. This is going to take over Asia Minor, be part of Turkey, right below the Black Sea, down through Syria, down to Israel. Cassander goes more east of that, probably more toward, I think, Babylon and that region, and Ptolemy is Egypt. Now, 4 of Alexander's generals took over the empire: Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. And this is the one that right here we're going to keep our eye on, this one coming out of the Syrian section. Now, the little horn is going to represent, now this is one of those little skipping stone things where it's going to be an immediate kind of happening at the time, and then projecting way into the future. So this is going to represent a very, very evil man, but it's also going to represent the Antichrist too. And we'll get into that. But the little horn represents a guy by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, looking up, there's actually 2 ways to say this, and both ways are correct. Some people say Antiochus, and some people say Antiochus. I say Antiochus because it sounds more Greek to me, rather than Antiochus somehow. I don't know why. I say Antiochus. So either way is correct. Whichever way you've learned, it's fine. But the little horn represented Antiochus Epiphanes, the 8th king of the Syrian dynasty. And he reigned from 175 to 164. Now, so here we go. Cassander here, he takes Greece and Macedonia. Lysimachus, he takes, which would be Turkey. Seleucus here. This empire is where Antiochus Epiphanes is going to come from. Notice it's this area, the Syrian area, down here to through Arabia a little bit. And then Ptolemy here would be Egypt. And let's see. This one, yeah, Cassandra's up there. Okay, so we got him. Now, Epiphanes attacked and captured Jerusalem. His cruelty was unimaginable. If you ever want to read about this guy, Antiochus Epiphanes, some people think he was just literally driven by Satan himself. This guy was as evil as you could possibly think. And it's going to be a representation of the Antichrist. Okay, of the Antichrist. And he's coming from the Syrian region. And he captures Jerusalem. His cruelty was unimaginable. Now, in verse 10, it says, it grew up to the heavenly lights, and some of the lights, that is, some of the stars, it threw down to earth and trampled them. Bible scholars tend to think that the stars in this case are representing the Jewish people. He completely demolished, or didn't demolish, but he defiled the temple, going in, pouring swine broth on the altar. But God allowed it to happen. See, God is in control of this whole thing here. The Jewish people didn't understand it at the time. You know, I know a lot, we're kind of thinking of world events, and we're thinking, man, God, are you really in control? Oh yeah, he's in control. He knew all of this was going to happen. It is part of his divine plan. Now, the warfare included the spiritual realm of probably angels and demons, even some historians seem to feel. Some feats attributed to Antiochus are astounding if true. Probably demonic power was even being exhibited. This guy was as bad as they come. Now, Antiochus defiled the temple and sacrificed swine and unclean animals. He poured swine broth on the altar, did whatever he could to defile it. And then it says in verse 13 through 16, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that particular one who was speaking, how long? Now, you got to really pay attention here. It says, so there's two angels apparently, and one says to the other, they're watching Antiochus Epiphanes desecrate Jerusalem and the temple. So one of the angels says to another, how long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply while the offense causes horror, so as to allow both the sanctuary and the army to be trampled? How long is Antiochus Epiphanes going to be allowed to desecrate the temple? And the other angel says, and he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be properly restored. 2,300 days from that point, it would be restored, according to Daniel's vision. When I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it, and behold, standing before me was one who looked like a man. And I heard the voice of a man between the banks of the Uli, and he called out and said, Gabriel, explain the vision to this man. Now, we hear Gabriel visiting Daniel twice, okay? Now, verses 13 to 14 states that Epiphanes would defile the temple for 2,300 evenings and mornings. This defilement, we know through pretty much Bible historians through history, lasted from about 171 BC to December 25th, 165 BC. And this was during this amount of days and nights. Epiphanes died during a military campaign in Media. So here's an incredible number that goes out. We tend to know the dates on this thing. And what does God do? He raises up a Jewish priest called Judas Maccabeus. And sometimes you heard the Maccabees. It was a family. He's known as the Hammer. And it was a powerful Jewish family. And they drove out the Syrian army, cleansed and rededicated the temple. After 2,300 days, he does it. And this is where the Jews get the Feast of Lights. And they celebrate this event. And the Jews celebrate this event today called Hanukkah. So when you hear Hanukkah, it's celebrating when the Maccabees defeated Antiochus's army, drove them out, reestablished the temple. and then it's observed even today. Now, these events occurred during the intertestamental period of the Old and New Testaments. Now, what's interesting, when you read Malachi, the very last book of the Old Testament, and then you read Matthew, the first book of the New Testament, that period of 350 years or so, sometimes it's called the intertestamental period, because we don't have any more prophets come on the scene after Malachi. But yet, at the same time here, a lot was going on. Sometimes they say it's the silent period because we don't hear God speak. Well, he doesn't really need to, because he's already spoken through Daniel what's going to happen after Malachi up to the time Jesus is born. So even though we didn't have any other prophets come up, Daniel told the Jewish people what to look for. Okay. Now, verse 17 through 27, and highlighting verse 19, states all these events pertain to end times and parallel to Daniel 2. It says in chapter 8, verse 19, and he said, behold, I'm going to inform you of what will occur at the final period of the indignation, because it pertains to the appointed time of the end. So he's talking about end times here, not only the times in the intertestamental period, but talking about the times of the end after Christ returns. So here we have these two animals, the goat and the ram being Persia, the goat being Greece. And so chapter 8 is talking about these two parts of the statue in chapter 2. It's the bear, okay, and the leopard in chapter 7. It's the ram and the goat in chapter 8. Now we get to chapter 9, verse 1 and 2. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, and apparently this Ahasuerus had to have been different from Esther's Ahasuerus. So, and also there's a little bit of concern on who Darius was. It's not really clear. A lot of the time, there's some Bible scholars feel that Darius was a name for a royal person. They sometimes think it probably was Cyrus, but we'll say Darius because that's what chapter 9 says. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus of Median descent, who was made king over the kingdom of the Chaldeans. In the first year of his reign, now here we are at 539. Okay, so what has happened is the Babylonian king, now he's gone. Okay, so he's out of the way. Belteshazzar is gone. Okay, now we're back on track. Okay, so now we're back 539 BC. The Medo-Persian Empire has taken over, and Darius or Cyrus could be, this is his first year in reign now. It says, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus of Median descent, was made king over the kingdom of the Chaldeans. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, observed in the books the number of the years, which was revealed as the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet, for the completion of the desolations of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. So what we are in is year 66. So it's years 66 years in captivity, and Daniel is now realizing, and he's been reading Jeremiah, and Jeremiah has prophesied, you will be 70 years. And we know that Darius takes over in 539, so this has got to be the 66th year of captivity, meaning that in 536, 535, it's something they're going to be released. And so Daniel starts really praying because he knows the time clock is now ticking to those 70 years. And if they're not righteous people again, who knows, they might live the rest of their life there. So look what he does. He starts praying. it says, I observed the number of years which is revealed as the word of the Lord to Jeremiah the prophet for the completion of desolation of Jerusalem, namely 70 years. So he's looking at this and he's realizing we're getting close to that. So Babylon fell during the first year of Darius, Median king. Darius could have been, again, a provincial governor, could have been Cyrus himself. We just really don't know. Daniel studied Jeremiah's prophecy of the 70 years. So let's look at Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah is still living. He's still back in Jerusalem. He did not go with the wave. Well, let's see here. Let me think. I take that back. He might be dead by now. I'll have to ask him. I think he might be not living now. Yeah. We'll say he's not. This entire land, well, maybe he is. This entire land will be a place of ruins and an object of horror. See, Jeremiah prophesied this years back. And these nations will serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. Then it will be when 70 years are completed, I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation declares the Lord, for the wrongdoing and the land of the Chaldeans. And I will make it an everlasting desolation. So he knows it's 70 years. So we get into verses 3 through 19. So Daniel immediately begins to confess Israel's sins and praised God for his faithfulness. So Daniel says, so I gave my attention to the Lord to seek him by prayer and pleading with fasting, sackcloth, and ashes. I prayed to the Lord my God and confessed and said, O Lord, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant and faithfulness for those who love him and keep his commandments. We have sinned. We have done wrong and acted wickedly and rebelled, even turning aside from your commandments and ordinances. So he is really, and it goes much longer. I didn't put the whole thing down, how he prays earnestly, repenting. Then he says, while I was still speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my plea before the Lord my God in behalf of the holy mountain of my God, while I was still speaking in prayer, the man Gabriel, this is the second time Gabriel is going to show up, whom I had seen in the vision previously in chapter 8, came to me in my extreme weariness about the time of the evening offering. Now, the evening offering was not being offered. They weren't allowed to practice their customs here in the Far East. But Daniel still knew when it would be. He still kept them alive. He still kept God's promises alive. He didn't throw in the towel. He knew God was still in control. Now, the angel Gabriel visited him for the second time. It says, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it. And behold, standing before me was one who looked like a man. And I heard the voice of a man between the banks of the Uli, and he called out and said, Gabriel, explain the vision to the man. Okay, now it says in Daniel 9, gives a countdown from the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. If you think the 2300 day and evening things were pretty fantastic for when Antiochus Epiphanes would stop harassing Jerusalem, this will knock your socks off. Okay, it says, Daniel 9:24 through 27 gives a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Prince Jesus, would come. So this is Daniel. A prophecy is given. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the wrongdoing, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So you are to know and understand that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Okay, it's going to be 7. Some people think that the first 7 weeks of years was rebuilding Jerusalem. And the other 62 weeks was Israel living in Jerusalem. So it makes a total of 69. But it's going to be 70 altogether. Now we're dealing with Jerusalem, Israel, that is. 70 weeks total. But it's going to be 69 until the Messiah comes. It'll be built again with streets and moats. even in times of distress. So when you read Jeremiah, you'll read how much trouble they had trying to rebuild Jerusalem. Then after the 62 weeks, and 7 had already taken place, you have 7, then you have 62. So it's after the 69 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, showing the Messiah will be killed. And the people of the prince, and this is where you got to kind of really look at the language here. It's not saying the prince is going to do this. The people of the prince who is to come. So this prince is not going to be at the time of the people. He's going to be in the future, but his people, okay, will destroy the city. That happened in 70 AD after Jesus, the Roman Empire, the Romans, who is going to be of the Antichrist who will come, destroys the city in 70 AD and the sanctuary. And its end will come with a flood. Even to the end, there will be war. Desolations are determined. And he will confirm, we're talking about the Antichrist now we're talking about the prince. He will confirm a covenant with the many, meaning the Israelites, for 1 week. I'll explain the weeks and all that. But in the middle of the week, he'll put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate, until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. Wow, who's desolate, who's one, and who's all of this? Okay, let's see if we can tear this thing apart a little bit. Now, the countdown included 70 weeks of years. Now, in Jews, you had weeks of days, which is 7 days, weeks of weeks, which is 7 weeks, weeks of years, which is 7 years. So 70 weeks of years are 490. Now, what's very interesting here, remember it is 490 years that they never observed the 7th year to let the land rest. So they were taken away for 70 years in captivity to make up those 70 years they had missed during the 490. Well, now those 70 years are up, and there's going to be another 70 weeks of years, another 490 years. So when the decree is given to rebuild Jerusalem, count down the 490 years and the Messiah will come. The decree to restore Jerusalem took place in the month, and we know this, but historically, historians know it. It took place in the month of Nisan, 445 BC. Now, Nehemiah 2, 1 through 8 says, now Nehemiah was the one who was given the decree to by Artaxerxes to go ahead and begin building Jerusalem. And it came about in the month of Nisan, and the 20th year of King Artaxerxes. He was the son of Xerxes. Xerxes was Queen Elizabeth's king. Queen Elizabeth, Queen Esther. Sorry, wrong country. Queen Esther. Thank you. Well, that happened too, but the year king, Xerxes was Queen Esther's king. This is his son Artaxerxes. That wine was before him. Now Nehemiah was the cupbearer. He was to always drink the wine before the king did, in case poison was in it. He'd be taken out before the king. He was always supposed to be happy and a good mood. Whenever you're in the presence of the king, always being exuberant. You were not allowed to show any kind of being upset, sad, or anything. And I picked up the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had not been sad in his presence. So the king said to me, why is your face sad? Though you're not ill, this is nothing but sadness of my heart. Now he pours it out. I mean, he's taking a big risk here to tell the king that he's not happy. So, like we say, hey, how you doing? Oh, great. Well, he done it. He said, I'm unhappy. Then I was very much afraid because he thought, oh, no, I've said it now. And I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the site of my father's tombs, is desolate and its gates have been consumed by fire? Then the king said to me, what do you request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. I know this had to be one of those quick prayers we shoot up, all of a sudden something's about to happen, or we need an answer. God help, it's that quick. So I prayed to the God of heaven. Then I said to the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your eye before you, I request that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. Then the king said to me, with the queen sitting beside him, how long will your journey be? And when will you return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I gave him a definite time. And I said to the king, if it pleases the king, so he even goes a step further, not only being released, but he says, let letters be given me for the governors of the provinces beyond the river, so that they will allow me to pass through until I come to Judah. And a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's force, so that he'll give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel, which is by the temple, for the wall of the city, and for the house to which I will go. And the king granted them to me because the good hand of my God was on me. Okay, now, after this decree that Artaxerxes gives, the Jews were to count 490 years, and the Messiah would come. Now, Sir Robert Anderson, in his book, The Coming Prince, I think, Doug, you read that, didn't you? Tell me. Yeah. The Coming Prince has worked out the time schedule. After 69 weeks, you have 880 days. The Messiah would come. The command to rebuild Jerusalem by Artaxerxes took place in Nisan, it is 445 BC. From this date to when Jesus entered Jerusalem was April the 6th, AD 32. That was exactly 173,880 days to the day, which is the exact day Jesus entered Jerusalem, openly declaring himself to be the Messiah. Do you remember when Jesus was coming in, he looked at Jerusalem and wept and said, if only you knew this thy day, what it meant? What he was referring to, this is the 173,880th day, if only you knew. This is why, this is another Mormonism here. I would not be surprised if the Jewish leaders knew he was the king. They had to have been calculating this. They had to have. You know, they knew that when it was calculated that'd be 2,300 days, that Antiochus Epiphanes would be driven out of Jerusalem. They knew those calculations. Daniel told them what 70 weeks meant. They knew how many days. How could they not have known Jesus? Remember, they said, we've got to hush him out or everyone's going to believe in him. I think this is what corruption of power does to people. They know truth right there, but they're not willing to give up their power. They're not willing to give up their glory. Had they recognized Jesus as Messiah, they would have been nothing anymore. People would not have honored them. They would have not bowed to him. Their expensive robes would have been nothing. Jesus would have been the king right there. And he would have gone in Jerusalem and began his reign on earth. But see, that wasn't God's plan, because had they accepted him, he would never have died on the cross. Had he never died, our sins never would have been forgiven. So even that was all in the making of the plan. Because Sir Robert Anderson figured this out, he was one of the leading men of Scotland Yard in England. He was knighted for this. This is why he's called Sir Robert Anderson. He was knighted for this work that he did in figuring this out. Now, so real quickly, we look at our charts. What Daniel said, he says there's going to be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, which is going to be a total of 69 years. Now, the 7 weeks is possibly what it took to fully get Jerusalem going. Then the 434 years were all the Jews living in Jerusalem up till the time Jesus came. Now, we know it is from March 14th, right here, March 14th, 445 BC, the issuing of the decree took place. Jesus comes April 6, 32 AD into Jerusalem. It makes 173,880 days total, but we're leaving out that 7th week. Okay, we're leaving out 7 years. So we're coming up to only the 69 weeks at this time. So 483 years, 7 weeks are missing to make the 490. Well, where are those 7 weeks? Right over here. So the 70 weeks are for your people. Okay, this is calculating the rule of the Jews. Okay, we are in here the church age. After Jesus died, the Jews lost their right to proclaim the Messiah, so it's the church, any believer in Jesus now, when this chart was 2000 plus or minus, it'd be a plus now because they're past 2000. This is the age of the church. We are now proclaiming the Messiah, but the Messiah is going to come right here. Okay, and then the 70th week, the 70th week, okay, which is a 7-year period, is then when the tribulation is going to come. And who's going to be really persecuted? Right in the middle of it, in the 3.5 years, the Antichrist is going to make peace with Israel in the first half. But the second half, he's going to attack them viciously. And so then after the tribulation, Jesus will come, start his millennial reign. Now, the gap appears between the 69th and 70th week. So all of these make 69. This is 70. So we have a gap right here. Verse 26 to 27 includes this gap. We're now in it. It's called the age of grace, or the present church age. So if we read Daniel, it says, then after 62 weeks, because remember, he lists the 7 weeks first, then he lists the 62, gives a total of 69. Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut out. He's killed. Okay, have nothing. And here it is, the people of the prince who is to come. So the people are going to destroy, the Romans are going to destroy, but the prince isn't going to be with them because he is yet to come. So the Romans are going to destroy Jerusalem in 70 AD, totally sack it. Then at some point, this prince is going to come, okay, but not yet. But the people are going to destroy the city and the sanctuary in 70 AD. Its end will come with a flood. Even to the end, there'll be war. Desolations are determined. And he will confirm a covenant. Okay, now verse 27 is the quantum leap past the church age. Now we're in that 7th week. He will confirm, now the he is the prince to come. He will confirm a covenant with the many for 1 week. Okay, it'd be 7 years. But in the middle of that week, 3.5 years, he's going to put a stop to the sacrifices, and he's going to do exactly what Antiochus Epiphanes did. Clear back then in the 4th century, put a stop to the sacrifices. That's why he was a caricature of the Antichrist, Antiochus Epiphanes. But this one is going to be much, much, much worse. He'll put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate. He's going to destroy everything until it's complete. One that is decreed gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. So Christ will ultimately come forth and destroy the Antichrist. Okay, so incredible prophecies here. So after the 69 weeks, the Messiah would be cut off or crucified. This is why I just cannot help but believe that the Pharisees, the religious leaders, had to have known. They had to have known this. You know, even when Herod, the wise men came to Herod, he went to the Jewish leaders and said, "Where's the Messiah to be born?" In Bethlehem. They knew that prophecy. So how could they have gone on and not known this calculation? It's, I think, pride of the human heart. There the Messiah was before them, possibly, and deliberately leading the people astray to kill him. Verse 26 states that the people of the prince, the Romans, the people of the prince are the Romans. Okay, the prince is who is to come. The Romans will destroy the city and sanctuary. The destruction occurred in 70 AD. The prince will come later at the start of the tribulation during this period right there. The Antichrist will manifest himself as the prince. This prince is the little horn in Daniel 7 and the beast of Revelation 13. So we see this coming out, the little horn of 7 coming out from the 4 horns of the Greek Empire. Now, Daniel 27, the 70th week will take place after the church is removed from the earth. So we're going to be that's clouds. We're not really in the clouds, but we're in, I'll put nature heaven. Okay, now we're going to be gone. And he'll make a firm covenant for 1 week, for many for 1 week. But in the middle, the Antichrist is going to break that covenant and attack Israel. Now, Israel, I believe, is going to be the center of the world at this time. It's going to be very, very prosperous. And this is why the nations of the world, God is going to put hooks in their mouths, bring them to attack Israel, because I believe Israel is going to be the apple of the earth's eye at this time. I believe it's going to be incredibly prosperous during this tribulation period. It's going to have unwalled villages. We read in Revelation, when the Antichrist comes, Ezekiel 38, 39, that they're going to be surprised that this person is going to the land of unwalled, a place of being unwalled. So Israel is going to be living in peace. They're not going to have walls put around it. So it's going to be very easy to attack, but they're not going to think they need walls, because the Antichrist is going to make a peace treaty with them. Now, 1 week refers to 7-year period. At the beginning of the 7 years, the Antichrist will make a peace covenant with Israel. However, in the middle of the 7 years, the 3.5 years, he's going to break it. He'll defile the temple. He'll set up a statue up in the temple. And he's at this time, I believe he's going to be indwelled with Satan. He's going to indwelled with him, and he's going to set himself up as God. And people will worship him as God. And so he'll break it. Christ's second coming will bring an end to Antichrist's rule. As you see down here, his second coming is going to finally bring an end to his rule. Now, chapters 10 through 12, can I do this quickly? Chapters 10 through 12 bridge the gap between the Old and New Testaments. This period is often called a period of silence because there's no recorded prophets. But God was very much in control, because he told Daniel so the Jewish people would know in these last 300-400 years that God was still in control. So they would read their scriptures and they'd say, okay, we've seen Medo-Persia go, we've seen Greece go, now we're in the Roman period. So they would have been calculating Daniel's prophecies, knowing what period they were in. So I believe they were looking for the Messiah at this time, because they would have known Daniel's prophecies and that they were in this period. So even though there were no actual prophets during this intertestamental period, chapters 10 through 12 explain the events that would occur. These prophecies are so accurate, describing even all of these chapters 7, 8, 9, then on 10, 11, 12. All of these prophecies are so accurate that many critics say the book of Daniel must have been written at a later date. Evidence, overwhelming evidence, proves different. Besides, if you just know Jewish history, you just didn't suddenly add things to their Bible, or to their scriptures. You just didn't do that, without them knowing it, and it'd be total heresy. These chapters give a very detailed account of Alexander's empire, his death, the division of the empire. Chapter 11 is one of the most amazing chapters. When we went through Daniel a year ago, we really took a lot of time going through 11, but it talks about the battle between the Seleucid Empire of Syria and Egyptian Empire, the Ptolemies. It even goes on who's going to marry who's going to kill who's going to make an alliance with who. It goes over, it doesn't name names, but it says the king of the north will take the king of the south, king of the south will make an alliance of the north, and it goes on. It's absolutely incredible. And it's so astounding, chapter 11, that, like I say, a lot of Bible critics says there's no way Daniel could have known that. Well, he didn't know it. God told him. And God actually knew. Chapter 12 predicts the resurrection of Old Testament believers, the resurrection of those who die in the tribulation, and the second coming of Jesus. So chapter 12 says, now at that time, Michael is apparently the angel over Israel, keeps Israel safe. The great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people will arise. There will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. Talking about the tribulation period. And at that time, your people, everyone who's found written in the book, will be rescued. There'll be some believing Jews who will be rescued from the Great Tribulation. Okay, and then there's going to be some believing Jews apparently who will be martyred. So they'll either be rescued by not being martyred, or they will be martyred but rescued with Christ in heaven. And many of those, he's telling Daniel now, many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground. Now, New Testament believers were in heaven. We got brand new bodies. Old Testament believers are in heaven, but their bodies aren't resurrected yet. So this is what it's saying. But of those who sleep in the dust of the ground, it's not meaning the Old Testament people are still on the ground. Their bodies are, but their spirits are with God in heaven, and they're tangible. They're tangible. They don't need bodies to be tangible. The only reason why these bodies are going to resurrect is because that's the ultimate thing that sin does, is death. Death is the ultimate thing of sin. So what's better to conquer the ultimate sin than resurrect death? Okay, so those who are sleeping in the ground, the Old Testament, plus those who die during the tribulation, who sleep, will awake, meaning the bodies will resurrect, join the spirits in heaven, which are physical. But others, unbelievers, to disgrace and of everlasting contempt. And those who have insight will shine like the glow of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. We're going to be shining lights. But as for you, Daniel, keep these words secret, seal up the book until the end of time. Many will roam about and knowledge will increase. Boy, isn't that happening? So in other words, those who are living during this time, they're going to understand end times. You know, we can guess and, figure out the best we can, but not until end times will we really know it. So the summary, though many of Daniel's visions would not take place during his lifetime, Daniel remained faithful to God. Daniel knew that obedience to God was more important than seeking the favor of man. And so he stayed faithful, even though he may have been shelved during Belteshazzar's reign. God has given us amazing prophecies through the Old Testament prophets. Many of these prophecies have come to pass while others are future related. It sure puts a lot of these modern day prophets to shame, doesn't it? They say, oh, I predicted this, I predicted that. Well, try predicting this kind of stuff. It's up to each person to study God's word and to patiently apply it to their life. Patiently. Be patient when things don't work out. Just know that God is in control. I know a lot of these people, Daniel's time, thought, how can we be patient? Is God really here? Now we're on this side of the story and we see, yes, God was manipulating. He was in charge of it. Do not become discouraged when prayers are not answered immediately. Do like Daniel did. Trust God's timing and trust his faithfulness. There might be sometimes you're shelved in life. Put aside like Daniel was, but stay faithful. And then the two bullets we started this whole series with, the prophet's words are as relevant today as they were 2,600 years ago. The Lord is compassionate, merciful, slow to get angry with the sinner, and filled with unfailing love. Okay, with us, we are always in his compassionate grace. His mercies endure forever. So with that, we can just basically know God's got everything in control. He's got it all. Trust him for where you are at the time right now, and just believe that he's got your life in his hands. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for letting us know you've got everything in control, even when we can't see it. You've got it. You've got our lives. Let us learn to relax and trust in you and not get our eyes on things of the world, people of the world, situations of the world, whatever it may be. Let us keep our eyes on you, and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you guys, good. So go ahead and take a little break. Oh, good. You guys are so good. Thank you. You guys are so awesome. Something, I better turn this off, then I'll talk to our people here. So you guys, God bless. Zoomers, stay on here. I gotta stop this.